Here are a few lies told about Donald Trump that are presented as facts. Number 6. He's a terrible businessman. Being as rich and as famous as Donald Trump comes with a high cost. Whenever you're successful in life, one thing that'll be true forever is haters gonna hate. One of the most common things detractors say about Trump is that he's not a good businessman. They give their reasons why by basically saying that he's gone bankrupt a bunch of times and that he inherited his fortune from his dad. Let's start with the bankruptcies. It's true, it's a fact, Trump declared bankruptcy several times over his lifetime, 6 times to be exact. All the bankruptcies were between 1991 and 2009 and were done in order to renegotiate debt with banks and owners of stock and bonds. To be clear, Trump has never filed for personal bankruptcy. The 6 bankruptcies were the result of Trump's over-leveraged hotel and casino businesses in Atlantic City and New York, the most serious of which were back in the early 90s. This was during a time when the national economy had started to slow down, which of course disrupted Trump's income streams. The Trump Organization and its subsidiaries at one time owed a whopping $9 billion, and Trump's personal debt totaled $975 million. What Trump was able to do was negotiate with banks and creditors to restructure his debt, which allowed him to get back on his feet. In fact, he's such a good negotiator, Trump was able to convince the banks to loan him an additional $65 million, which he used to keep his businesses afloat. Trump was quoted by Newsweek in 2011 saying, quote, "I do play with the bankruptcy laws. They're very good for me. All I can say here is, don't hate the player, hate the game." Bankruptcy laws are put in place to encourage the growth and proliferation of businesses, as obviously it's important to any economy. Having a safety net for businesses is a whole other argument, though. For Trump to have started so many businesses and ending up with 6 bankruptcies is par for the course in the business world. Sure, he's made mistakes in business, but a few mistakes doesn't just ruin the body of work for someone's career, and to say so would just be disingenuous. If Trump just took loss after loss after loss throughout his business career by using daddy's money, then that's one thing. But that's clearly something that didn't happen. This brings us to how much exactly did Trump inherit? Number 5. Trump inherited his fortune from his father. You've probably heard many different versions of this one as well. On multiple occasions, different sources have been trying to paint Trump as someone who inherited his fortune rather than made his fortune like a savvy and skilled businessman. Well, the truth is somewhere in between. It's true that Trump's father, Fred Trump, did have quite the chunk of change, as he had an estimated net worth between $250 and $300 million at the time of his death. But what's not true is that Trump just inherited all that. While the specific amount Trump inherited from his father hasn't been revealed, a January 2016 article from the New York Times shows that Fred Trump's will divided $20 million after taxes among his living children, which included Donald. What's also true is that Trump began his business career at his father's real estate company. With his father's tutelage and direction, he was able to learn from one of the best in the business in New York City. One of Trump's first projects was revitalizing a foreclosed apartment complex in Cincinnati, Ohio, which his father had purchased for $5.7 million in 1962. Fred and Donald both worked on the project, and with a $500,000 investment, which I'm sure was from his dad, they turned the 1,200-unit complex's occupancy rate from 34% to 100%. Trump has said that when he graduated from college in 1968, he was worth about $200,000, which is basically the equivalent to being a millionaire in today's dollars. He was made the president of the company in 1971, and in one of his first moves, he renamed the company to the Trump Organization. Later that year, he also moved to Manhattan, where he took on larger construction projects. Trump's first big deal was the development of the Grand Hyatt Hotel in 1978. Part of this deal was the infamous $1 million loan from his dad. At this point, Fred was a silent partner and Donald was the front man. Basically, it's true, Trump got a lot of help from his dad in terms of access to capital and also access to top-notch business skills. Trump likes to say that he built his empire from the $1 million loan that his dad did give him. But what he did leave out was the fact that his father also helped to hone his real estate skills by allowing him to learn at his company, working alongside deals with him, providing him with capital to work with. However, to Trump's credit, even though he grew up with a lot of advantages the average person didn't have, he still maximized his skill set to the best of his ability. Think of it as LeBron being gifted with his abilities at birth and still being able to make it to the top of the league. They both didn't just skate by on what they were given alone. They both had to put in lots of hard work to make it where they are. And just because you're given a huge competitive advantage at the beginning of life, it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Just think about all the professional athletes who had massive talent but didn't make it in their league. Or just all the trust fund babies out there who aren't doing anything with their lives. The starting point for Trump's business career was somewhere around the neighborhood of $1 million in capital back then, which is still a decent-sized number even for today. Now, Trump's worth more than $3 billion in 2017, or whatever the number is before the word billion, depending on who you talk to. Multiplying your starting net worth hundreds of times over, or even thousands of times over, if we decide to take Trump at face value, is extremely hard to do for anyone. While I may not agree with everything he says or does, a couple things you can't say about Trump are that he inherited his fortune from his dad and that he's terrible or even mediocre at business. Number 4, Russia ties to the election. If you don't know what to say against Trump, don't worry, just bring up Russia. You can choose the ever-burning topic of Russia ties and how Russia and its most influential leaders manipulated the most recent presidential elections in the US. I'd say that a bunch of those kids with the fake news industry in Macedonia is what's really propagating the Trump-Russia ties, but that's another story. Anyway, this statement passed around as a fact is massively spread and pushed around without ever being proven. The investigation is still ongoing, and there aren't any concrete ties to Russia meddling in the elections. On one occasion, even Delaware Senator Chris Coons went on live TV and said that the FBI obtained transcripts that proved collusion between Trump's presidential campaign and Russia. While it's true that Trump likes his Russian counterpart, and by the looks of it, his Russian counterpart loves him back, so far, nothing has been proven about any possible Russia meddling with the outcome of the presidential election. Trump has had business ties with Russia for a while now. Actually, it can all be traced back to the late 80s. On one occasion, his son said something along the lines that they see money pouring in from Russia, and Trump has been known to visit Moscow more than a few times, which, again, doesn't prove anything other than the fact that he probably likes doing business with those guys because he makes money with them. Later on, after what Senator Coons said went viral and produced something that could pretty much be described as internet mass hysteria, he went on and apologized, denying he had any knowledge of whether or not the FBI had such transcripts. Only time will tell if Trump actually had any ties with Russia meddling with the election. Until then, let's not jump to conclusions here. Number 3. Trump enacted a Muslim ban. It's no secret that there were major protests around the country when President Trump signed Executive Order 13769 titled Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorist Entry into the United States, or better known as the travel ban. Trump has long claimed that terrorists are using the U.S. refugee resettlement program to enter the U.S. When he was running for president, Trump's contract with the American voter pledged to suspend immigration from terror-prone regions, and the Trump administration described the executive order as fulfilling this campaign promise. The travel ban affected citizens residing in Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. However, when Trump signed the executive order into effect, many people interpreted it as a Muslim ban. The first thing that can be refuted is that the travel ban is a Muslim ban because the order didn't make any declaration of any specific religions, even if the regions are Muslim-majority countries. The second thing is that countries Trump selected in the travel ban are countries that President Obama himself picked as countries of concern, not Trump. In 2013, President Obama signed into law that banned refugees from Iraq from entering the U.S. for 6 months because of significant security concerns. In 2015, Congress enacted laws which Obama signed off on, which restricted visas from states of concern, which again basically meant that citizens coming from these countries were security risks. In 2016, Congress expanded these restrictions to even more countries, and Obama signed these restrictions into law again. So basically what Trump did when he first got into office was enact a travel ban in an effort to secure the US, just like Obama did himself in 2013 with the 6-month visa ban with refugees from Iraq. And Trump picked a ban with countries that the Obama administration, they themselves selected in 2015 and 2016 as states of concerns. When Obama did this, there wasn't widespread news coverage that Obama enacted the visa bans, nor was it laser focused on the fact that it was bans on Muslim-majority countries, leading people to believe that they were Muslim bans. Is there such a thing as media bias? I don't know. You tell me. Let's remember, everyone, what President Trump signed into law early this year was just a travel ban, not a Muslim travel ban. Number 2. Trump called all Mexicans rapists and killers. This is no doubt one of the more controversial things Trump ever said and has largely shaped his public image. After the campaign speech in which he dropped his infamous quote about illegal immigrants, CNN basically called out on him saying that he had called all Mexicans rapists and killers. Ever since then, news and social media followed, and it just stayed like it's a hardcore fact about Trump. Even Tim Kaine, the 2016 Democratic vice presidential nominee, used the term repeatedly during an August 1st campaign rally in his hometown of Richmond. He accused Trump of, quote, trash talking with Latinos, saying all Mexicans are rapists and going after Latino immigrants. No doubt, Trump has made certain controversial statements about Hispanics, but did Trump really go as far as saying all Mexicans are rapists? Here's what Trump actually said verbatim with his infamous statement, quote, when Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you, they're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. Trump wasn't referring to all Mexicans, nor even all illegal Mexican immigrants, as shown by his very last statement. He was actually referring to the illegal immigrants who cross the U.S. illegally that commit crimes. What's even worse is the fact that this quote isn't fully quoted. The part with the, and some, I assume, are good people, what Trump said about illegal immigrants isn't wrong. The Government Accountability Office released an updated report in 2011 on criminal aliens who are imprisoned for committing crimes in the U.S. The report found that criminal aliens, both legal and illegal, make up 27% of all federal prisoners. But non-citizens are only about 9% of the nation's adult population. It also looked at 251,000 criminal aliens in federal, state, and local prisons and jails. These illegal aliens were arrested nearly 1.7 million times for close to 3 million criminal offenses. 68% of illegal aliens in prison and 66% of those in state prisons were from Mexico. These statistics aren't fully representative of crimes committed by illegal aliens. The report only reflects the criminal histories of aliens who are actually in prison. Even if there were a way to include all crimes committed by criminal aliens, the numbers would likely be higher because prosecutors often agree to drop criminal charges against an illegal immigrant if they are assured that immigration authorities will deport that person. Even Obama mentioned more than a few times that he managed to deport more violent illegal immigrants than any other president in history. Was there a better way to talk about illegal immigrants and the crimes that they commit? Yes. Does Trump sometimes lack eloquence and need to tone down his speeches a bit? Absolutely. But should the media twist his words as they see fit? Not really. Number 1. Trump advocated assaulting women. Many people think Trump isn't quite the gentleman fit enough to run the White House. Some people think that the way he talks alone is enough that he shouldn't be in the White House. This fact was backed up with the recorded conversation between him and Billy Bush that was released during his presidential campaign, but recorded all the way back in 2005. In the video, you can hear Trump getting a bit carried away, talking about the things he'd do to the pretty ladies they might meet during the filming of the show. Then he talked about being a star and being allowed to do whatever you want to them. And the infamous and incredibly crass "grab him by the pussy" quote, which brings me to my next point. Let's make it clear. What Trump said was incredibly rude and incredibly insensitive. However, what he talked about was not advocating sexual assault. There's a big difference in what he said and what was interpreted. He clearly said that women let him do whatever he wants, and in all fairness, they'd probably do it just because he's rich and powerful, but that's a completely different topic. The thing is, Trump never said he just grabs women without permission. He said that they would let him. Again, that's a big difference in meaning. Think about how much trouble we would be in if our significant others didn't allow us to do the things we do. On another note, who knows how much trash talking Trump was doing here? Because this might have been a hypothetical situation he's talking about trying to impress Billy Bush and not an actual scene that played out. One thing that's for sure, Trump was not bragging about being able to sexually assault women. Because what sort of self-respecting man would want to brag and talk shit about that? What he was bragging about instead was his supposed effect on women, regardless of how much it is in reality. The leaking of the video exploded and got twisted all over the place, leading people all around the world to believe Trump advocates assaulting women. It's one thing if he does something women don't want, but if women let him do it, it's a major difference not many people seem to bother to notice. Trump apologized for his comments in the video as soon as the video was out in public, which conveniently enough was released 2 days before his debate with Hillary. He said that the whole thing was just a bunch of locker room trash talk and that Bill Clinton has said far worse things to him on the golf course. While we may never find out whether the latter is true or not, in all fairness, let's be for real. There are plenty of dudes who do plenty of private trash talking with their friends. Again, Trump should definitely tone things down a notch or two, but people really should use common sense as well to really hear what his intended message was. Here's what's next.
Mexico will pay for the wall. His plan is to tell Mexico to pay for the wall, and if they don't, he's going to put a tax on money that Mexican workers in the U.S. send back to their families in Mexico. Or he's going to raise tariffs on goods coming from Mexico into the United States. He says that the U.S. imports more from Mexico than they